It's been well over a year since voting for the grimoire began, and the results have finally arrived in the form of the Chorus of Sin chapter, bringing Aurora Stardotter and the Judgement. And I gotta say, it's pretty awesome. Like my favorite original chapter in years type of awesome. Now, does that mean my opinion is completely objective and this is just the best chapter ever? Well, I like to think I'm pretty smart, but no. This chapter is by no means perfect. This video is going to go into the goods and the bad of Chorus of Sin. But first, I need to do a little housekeeping before we can talk about Aurora and the Judgement. This chapter came with some pretty delicious and desperately needed patch notes that I would be more than happy to share with you. Also, if you think my voice sounds a little off, it's because I'm currently very sick, which stinks because I won't be able to express my full excitement, but it's alright. You see, I'm in the trenches right now to get this video to you, dearest viewer. Like and subscribe. The devs recently stated that they would no longer be doing balancing changes on content releases, and that these changes would only come out with mid-chapter patches. When I first heard this, I thought it was a terrible idea. The meta has already become stale enough, and we've barely gotten any perk changes all year. But it seems that they are kind of going back on their statement, as we have some pretty significant changes that I think will potentially hit the current meta. And I cannot express how good this is. It's not much, but it can definitely hold me over until the massive 45 perk update coming later in the year, which hopefully is going to bring a massive meta shift, just like the 6.1.0 update, which is still probably my favorite balancing update in the history of Dead by Daylight. So what are these changes? Well, we have some really nice user interface changes and additions, multiple perk changes, and some changes to the unhook protections. Those ones are gonna be juicy. Let's start with the interface changes. With this update, we now have a way, infinitely better power description system. The descriptions themselves are much more concise, but also you can actually now view previews of a killer's power similar to other miserable online multiplayer games like Marvel Rivals or Rainbow Six Siege. There's also little tips that the game tells you that are actually genuinely helpful. Some examples of these are for the Wraith, it tells you that you can use your cloak speed to body block survivors, and also how you can use elevation to make your skeletons fly lower so that they are impossible to crouch under for Vecna. Genuinely good tips. My girlfriend has recently started getting into Dead by Daylight, God bless her soul, no pun intended, and these previews are going to be such a life changer for her because how is she going to understand this? Genuinely such a needed change. Some other visual changes are how the hook stages are now separated on the hook timer, which is another amazing change, and this new play button, which honestly I'm not a huge fan of. I like how slick and minimal it is in the current version, just my preference. Now for perks, 15 of them are changing, and that's nothing to scoff at. So for killers, Nurse's Calling now works for healing slug survivors as well, which is great. Call of Brine's time is being extended to 90 seconds instead of 70. To me, this isn't all that significant. I don't really see this perk getting any more usage than it is now. Colorophobia is getting a pretty hefty 20% nerf, which is pretty crazy. Ugh. I get why though. It could be very egregious in slugging builds. It's still going to be a very solid anti-heal option, so I'm not too upset about this. Thrill of the Hunt is getting nerfed, thank God, because the Hex meta is so boring to play with and against, in my opinion. However, it's only a 2% nerf, but the devs are saying that they are currently looking at potential future changes for this perk. Please God actually end up doing something about this demonic evil ass fuck perk. Save the best for last, which is now called Keep Them Waiting. I didn't even realize that, so I thought I was going crazy when I was reading the patch notes.
I am not crazy!
It's getting a 1% increase to 5% per stack, so up to a total of 40%. This is nice. I just miss when you didn't lose stacks on secondary attacks. It's pretty much butchered this perk for the most part. I still occasionally use it though, so I'm excited, but this won't have a huge impact. Oh my god. It saddens me to say that Nowhere to Hide is getting a huge nerf, as now it only reveals survivors near the generator's location instead of the killer's location. I understand why they did this. The perk isn't going to be bad by any means, but oh man, sad day to be Teabag. Apocalyptic Ingenuity and Moment of Glory now only require one chest to open, which makes them actually somewhat usable now. They're still not great perks by any means, but definitely nice to see. Deliverance is getting a nerf where now you are broken for a whole extra minute, which is actually an extremely long time for this game. The perk is definitely still going to be really strong, but pretty bonkers nerf. Adrenaline is getting buffed for some reason. The haste will last a second longer now. Considering Aurora's new perk, which we'll talk about later, I see why they did this, but I think Adrenaline is already so strong, I'm not really sure this was necessary. Clean breaks time before healing you has now been cut by 15 seconds, pretty nice. Repressed Alliance is actually getting buffed. Originally they said they were going to extend the time, which would have actually nerfed this perk, which would have been stupid. But now they've sliced the time the generator is blocked in half. I really hope this perk sees more usage. Technician is getting a buff, but it still sucks. Not much else to say. And oh my god, thank god, Vigil is getting nerfed. Status effects now go down 40% faster instead of 66%. This was so needed. It's still a strong perk too, so it's great that it wasn't just completely buried. However, there's still some more changes needed for this perk in my opinion. Vigil shouldn't work on the Clown and Freddy's power, and I personally also don't think that it should work with teammates either, but this is a good start. Now, some of you may be thinking that I skipped one, but I decided to save the best for last. Sprint Burst is getting nerfed, baby! Praise the Lord! Amen! The community has been blessed. Sprint Burst has been one of the best exhaustion perks and one of the best survivor perks in general, hands down, without Vulture for 10 years now. This is genuinely huge, and I'm very happy to see this. It could bring a grown man to tears. I'm the grown man, by the way. I'm in tears. Overall, I gotta say that I'm pretty happy with these perk changes for the most part, and I'm hoping that this can kind of spice things up for a while. Now let's talk about the unhook protection changes because, oh my god, this is a mixed bag. For starters, they reverted the unhook protections back to 10 seconds from 15 seconds. This is so great, man. The only change that came out of that god-awful 9.3.0 patch was the increasing of unhook protections from 10 to 15 seconds, which was just terrible. Unhook protections were now completely abusable by survivors, which is just, like, not the purpose of them at all. I've been saying that they need to revert this since they added it, and now they have. But as a lot of times with these changes that behavior makes for the community, the monkey paw curls, and now survivors also get elusive with their unhook protections. Elusive is genuinely such like a terrible and just broken status effect. This status effect just makes you completely invisible. Not literally invisible, but like you cannot be tracked in any way whatsoever. This status effect either needs to be used very sparingly or just be straight up removed from the game entirely, but behavior just likes to hand elusive out like it's candy on Halloween. So I don't know, man. We'll see how these changes play out, but I'm worried to say the least. And that's about it for the patch notes. Overall, I'm pretty happy we're seeing some pretty big changes. Things like the sprint burst nerf and the new power descriptions are amazing, while some things like the unhook protection changes are kind of worrying. But who knows? The stars will guide us on this one. Speaking of the stars, let's talk about Chorus of Sin's new survivor, Aurora Stardotter. Aurora is a religious astrologist from a world that has been raptured by the Judgement, or the god that it worships. What little we do know about her lore-wise seems really interesting so far. I'm actually very excited to learn more about her, which is something that I can't say for a ton of other original survivors. Her design is amazing, and it fits perfectly into the game while also telling you a lot about the character just from looking at her. I voted for this Chad originally, rest in peace. Unfortunately, he didn't win, but she was definitely my second pick. I'm just so glad Aurora won because she saved us from conventionally attractive woman number 86. I gotta be honest, the community had me sweating on a few of those votes. I love badass elderly characters, so she's an absolute win for me. After all though, survivors are just a skin, so let's see what perks she brings into the game. Fruits of Labor is, I think, her best perk and potentially the strongest perk in the chapter. It's basically a budget adrenaline. Essentially, every generator that's completed in the trial adds a token, and each token gives you 5% haste and 20% healing progress whenever you yourself repair a generator. I actually think this is a really neat perk. And I also think that it doesn't just completely outperform Adrenaline, because unlike Adrenaline, you yourself have to actually do the generator to get the benefits. I think it's a really neat perk and alternative to Adrenaline. Salvation's Cry makes it so that whenever you get into a chase, you see other survivors' aura for 3 seconds, and survivors see yours and the killer's aura for 5 seconds. Similar to Bond, this is a very good perk for solo queue. That's never a bad thing. It's always a good idea to make perks that make solo queue a little easier. The smaller the power gap between Survive with Friends and solo queue is, the better, and we should strive to close that gap as much as possible. Boon Steadfast is going to be one of the better boon perks in the game. It makes generators in its range regress 50% slower, which is going to be a strong counter to perks like Ruin, Call of Brine, the Judgment's new perk Lay Waste. It also makes survivors repair generators 10% faster. This is definitely going to be a very solid perk, and I think boons are fun to play with and around for the most part. Is it going to be overpowered or anything? I don't think so, but it'll definitely be strong, and you're going to have to look out for this as killer. It seems like Miss Stardotter has very well-rounded perks. It always sucks when a character releases with junk perks that no one will ever use. Again, I'm very happy with Aurora Stardotter. But now let's talk about the reason that everyone is here for, the Judgement. I'm just gonna flat out say it. This is potentially one of my favorite original designs in this entire game. Top 5 at least. I mean, this killer looks unreal. The coolest original chapters, at least for me, are when behavior releases just like horrific fucking monsters you can't even comprehend. Like the Dredge and obviously the Unknown, who has been the most popular original character in years. The Judgment's design is so creepy. Divine Horror is one of my favorite subgenres of horror, and I'm glad to finally see it come into the game. When we voted for the silhouettes, I absolutely hated the crab legs, but actually seeing it in game has made it grow on me so much. And the faces embedded in the legs screaming are just so just disturbing. It makes my skin crawl. All the sporadically twitching eyes feel like a god peering at you through the flesh of this angel who carries herself calmly and gracefully. I can't get enough of it, honestly. Her design is a little bit bloated though, I will admit. Especially with the blue veins all over her body. It is a lot to look at. I can look past it though. This is currently the look I'm rocking right now. Straight aura, this bitch definitely smites. Also, this killer has the best Mori in the entire game. It's not the one we voted for some reason, but hey man, I'm fine with this.
My decree is final.
Ah, good old-fashioned Eldritch horror. Gotta love it. Anyways, let's get into the ins and outs of this killer gameplay-wise. The Judgment has been decisive to say the least, but whether you like her or not, this killer is, for a lack of a better word, surreal, and it feels like you're playing an entirely different game when you're against her. Why is this killer so decisive, you ask? Well, dearest viewer, let me put it simply for you. This killer is extremely hard. Like, she is 100% the hardest killer in the game alongside Hillbilly Nurse or Pre-Lobotomy Singularity. While some feel disdain for her difficulty, I seriously cannot exaggerate when I say she might have my favorite power they've released since the Cool Vecna. But before I get into why, let me briefly explain. The Judgment's power is called Will of the Gods, and despite having a lot of moving parts, it all revolves around her projectile, Divine Light. Divine Light is essentially a beam of light that comes down from the sky that works different than any other projectile in the game. Before firing, you steer its trajectory before it fires off at incredible speed over long distances. Doesn't sound so bad. What's stopping you from just summoning it right over a survivor's head? Well, there's a little bit of a catch to it. The beam actually has a startup before it actually deals damage, so you really have to be precise. However, what's even more difficult is using this power at close range. When you charge the beam, the starting point moves out at a fixed rate, so you can't just drop it right in front of you. You have to use what's been coined by hens as the Beyblade tech, where you turn away from a survivor and begin the trajectory before snapping back and letting it rip onto the survivor. I'm not kidding when let it rip. I'm not kidding when I say this is incredibly difficult, and the Beyblade tech could potentially be one of the hardest things to master in this game. But oh my god, when it lands, it feels about as good as slamming 4 buzz balls in a row. Now, what actually happens when you don't suck and hit a survivor with Divine Light? When a survivor is hit by Divine Light, they become a heretic, shown by this effect around their head. Fun fact, survivors can also become heretics by teabagging you, which is awesome. When a survivor is a heretic, they actually get old Hex Ruin skill checks, which is so cool. It gives the killer passive slowdown and makes hit and runs a viable strategy. But the main part of heresy is that when a heretic is downed, the Judgement can exile them to the Hopeless Exile. This is one of the coolest elements of any killer's power in the game. It's similar to Pyramid Head's Cages of Atonement. It counts as a hook state, and unhook perks don't work on survivors freed from exile, but it goes so much further than the cages. Survivors actually get to run around in the Hopeless Exile, where they are equipped with the Searcher's Pendant, which they have to use to absorb previously exiled souls to increase their protections when freed. They also have to evade a barrage of divine beams coming down from the sky. I can't express how much I love this. The Hopeless Exile is this twisted form of heaven, ruled by a tyrannical god that believes itself to be righteous. Screaming faces and hands reaching out in agony are trapped in the walls and pillars. It all lies beneath this pale, oppressive sunlight that feels anything but safe. It is so unbelievably cool. And finally, whenever the Judgement banishes a survivor, she becomes Zealous for 60 seconds. Zealous is essentially an empowered state. Divine Light becomes way scarier, with an increased radius, shorter cooldown, and more control over its trajectory. Its duration resets every time you exile survivors, so you can really build pressure fast if you play well. This power sounds like a lot on paper, and well, it's cause it is. But when you eventually get good at it, and you will eventually get good at it, I have faith in you, you will feel like an angel carrying out the judgment of a wrathful god, which is why she's called the Judgement. This power has such a steep learning curve. When you first play her, you will get your ass kicked. Be ready for that. But once you get the hang of things, you'll realize just how much power is in your hands. It's very thematic because I genuinely do feel like a god when I play her well. This killer is just completely and utterly disgusting. When I finally got to play my first game as her, I could not hit a single shot on Survivor and just got completely destroyed. I felt like a little Chudladite who had no talent. But I kept playing her more and more, and it slowly started to click. Eventually, I started hitting shots like these much more consistently. This character really is a lot of fun. You just have to put the time in. The Judgement also has, hands down, one of the best lists of add-ons in the game. Add-ons like Aurora's Telereceptor and Eyes of Gerhardt revealed Survivor's aura, which, as you'll soon see, is extremely valuable to the Judgement. There's also add-ons like Holy Winged Icon, where you can alternatively fire the beam back towards you. Order of Inquisition is more of like a sniping add-on where the beam starts out much skinnier but grows much larger in size by the end. Crown of the Destroyer makes it so that your terror radius goes onto your shrines when a survivor is freed, which is just super fun. Mirror of the Creator makes the beams bounce off objects. This one is just absolutely insane. I played with it once and I wasn't really able to do anything crazy with it. To be honest, I just got a bunch of accidental hits off of it, but it was a really fun add-on to use. And there's also plenty of other really fun out there add-ons. A lot of ones affecting how you play the killer. There's so much to experiment with, which I always think is a good thing. Now, her 3 teachable perks are Celestial Witness, Hex Under Your Thumb, and Lay Waste. Celestial Witness makes it so that every 30 seconds, if the obsession is 40 meters away from you, you see their aura for 3 seconds. Otherwise, the farthest survivor becomes the obsession. I really like this perk. It's very fun. Seeing auras is so powerful on this killer because you can basically hit anyone from across the map if your aim is good enough. So as you'll see when I mention some perks that are really good on her later, anything you pick that's going to let you see the aura is a good idea for this killer. Hex under your thumb makes it so that when the first survivor gets hooked, Hex under your thumb goes onto a random dull totem. Running survivors cannot gain more than 15% haste at a time, and whenever a running survivor within 32 meters gains haste, you see their aura for 4 seconds. Once again, you see some aura, which is nice, but also this Hex is really nice because it's pretty much just going to shut down exhaustion perks like Live, Balance Landing, and Sprint Burst, because their haste can't go over 15%, so it pretty much neuters all exhaustion perks. I actually think this is a pretty solid Hex totem. And then our last perk, Lay Waste, makes it so that when you damage a generator, it regresses 2% faster for each charge it has, which basically means the more progress the generator has, the faster it will regress. This is a great perk. Lay Waste is very good with perks like Pop, Eruption, Surge, just a lot of other regression perks. It's a very good regression perk, but it's not a very good regression perk on its own, if that makes sense. It's like a secondary. But overall, I think the Judgement has 3 very solid perks. But what other perks are good on her? Well, like I said, aura perks are the best on her. My personal favorite perk to run on her is Gearhead, because if you know what you're doing, you're going to be damaging survivors a lot, so you're constantly going to be seeing them on generators, and when a survivor's on a generator, they are just a sitting duck for you. But also, running Celestial Witness with Nemesis is going to be dirty. I'm very excited for this to go live because I haven't tested it, but I will definitely play around with that when I play, because if the obsession is far, you're going to see their aura, but if not, Nemesis is going to switch the obsession, and then you're going to see the new obsession's aura. So you're just going to be constantly seeing people's auras randomly, and survivors are going to be so scared because they never know when they're going to get hit. But while I have been gushing about her for the last few minutes, the Judgement is far from perfect. She has some glaring issues, some that need to be addressed when Chorus of Sin goes live. Now, while this particular issue is subjective, her difficulty is going to make her inaccessible for a lot of players, which does suck. The idea of a community-made chapter being too hard for most of the casual audience was definitely a strange design choice for behavior, but personally, I really hope they keep her like this. I'm worried that if they try to make her easier, we're going to have another Krasu situation on our hands. If they are going to try and lower her skill floor, they need to be extremely cautious. Personally, I think they shouldn't touch it. There's nothing wrong with having some killers in the game be extremely hard to play. It gives players something to strive for, and it's necessary for a game like Dead by Daylight to have this sort of depth. Now, there are some of the problems that need fixing. For one, people with motion sickness really struggle to play this killer. The way you have to move your camera around when playing this killer, especially when Beyblading, can make this killer unplayable for some. This sucks. While I don't get motion sickness from games, I do get motion sick from roller coasters, and I do understand how sad it is to miss out on all the fun everyone else is having because of something you can't control. I've seen a lot of discussion saying that the Prayer Kneeler add-on should be made base kit. This add-on essentially turns Divine Light into something more akin to a slingshot as you put it against an object and shoot it off. This doesn't give players motion sickness, so I think this is a great solution. However, it would need to be on a toggle, because personally, I don't like the way using the Prayer Kneeler feels, and if you master Beyblading, you will perform better than using the Kneeler. So if I could choose which mode I want to use, I think this would be a much greater solution. But the thing I'm most nervous about is the Judgment's potential ability to hold a 3-gen. I haven't tried it myself, but it seems that with perks like Ruin and Surveillance, this killer can, on most maps, lock the entire trial down and win without needing to chase a survivor, and I am terrified of this prospect. This could be a release Skull Immersion situation all over again, and that prospect terrifies me. Fear what this killer may unleash upon this game, dearest viewer. It is the PTB though, and every killer is going to have some issues. And I'm sure they'll be fixed soon enough. I'm more than pleased with the Judgement. I can't wait for this killer to fully release and just spend hours really getting an understanding of her power. It's very exciting to have another killer who has such an immense skill ceiling. It really is scratching an itch for me. You see, I'm a scholar who loves learning, but not the type of scholar that achieves great things and lives a successful life, but the type of scholar who plays the Judgement on Dead by Daylight. We've talked about all the gameplay this chapter has to offer. Let's get into the lore that this chapter brings. Now, something really strange about this PTB is that neither Aurora nor the Judgement have any lore bio. Even the cosmetics don't have any sort of subscription. If I'm not mistaken, this has never happened before with any other chapter, so we'll just have to wait for the live release. But it's not all lost. The Judgment's add-ons actually do have little pieces of lore in them, so let's see what we can extract from them. And let me tell you, what they do reveal is potentially one of the coolest settings we've seen in this game. The lore tidbits of these add-ons all come from verses of different passages from what seems to be this setting's version of the Bible, which is really neat. We get verses from different chapters from 6 separate books. First Barbarians, Second Barbarians, Second on Heresy, Third on Heresy, Witness to Conrad, and Visions of Gerdart. I believe with this information from the add-ons and different voice lines, we can come to a conclusion on what the setting looks like, and I also have a theory about Aurora and the Judgment. When I first saw this chapter, I thought it was going to be a medieval setting, but not at all. It actually seems to be a setting far in the future. Add-ons like the Magnetized Manacles and Electric Torch support this, but also voice lines from Aurora confirms that their technology is far ahead of ours. Now, recordings of the voice lines aren't uploaded to the wiki at the time of me making this, and I haven't gotten any solid recordings of them, so you'll just have to trust me on this. But Aurora states that the exit gates are antiquated and calls survivors' healing methods primitive. Last time I checked, medkits aren't primitive for us. So it seems that Aurora and the Judgment are in some sort of hyper-religious futuristic society where God is more than real, and anyone who doesn't follow it will feel its wrath. This God is angry, and when I say angry, I mean angry. The Undying Flame add-on talks about the village of Dend, which was, quote, repentant in its last moments, but its remnants still burn to this day as a warning. The Superheated Glass add-on talks about how the planet of Alade was unrepentant, and once their leader was exiled, this god turned the surface of the planet into glass. Yeah, apparently, this whole thing is multi-planetary, which could explain why astrology is such a huge part of this setting. It's a very out there take on religious setting, and I'm really excited to see more with the full lore bios of Aurora and the Judgment. Now, even though we don't have their stories, I have my own personal theories about who Aurora and even the Judgment really are. I'll start with Aurora. In the trials, the Judgment mentions to her that exile was not enough, meaning that Aurora was exiled. Why? Well, she was a heretic. Aurora's telereceptor specifically states this, saying how it is a wretched device made by heretics. I think that she is a part of a rebellion that is against this god / the Judgment. The improvised detonator add-on talks about terrorist attacks with bombs made by these heretics. So, the basic idea is that Aurora is a heretic that is in a radical group that fights against the divine. But what if I took this one step further? Aurora calls Judgment a murderer in one of her voice lines. Presumably, this means that the Judgment killed someone or multiple people important to her. Now, I'm going to take a hit of my crack pipe and take this theory even farther. What if she was the leader of the planet Alade and was exiled before the god destroyed their planet? That's my crazy theory on who she is. Realistically though, she probably just is a member of this rebellion fighting back. But it would definitely be interesting. However, if I'm right though, you owe me a kiss. Now for the Judgment, there's definitely less to take from. I will say that the one thing that really confuses me is that I'm not really sure if the Judgment is just an angel or the true god. She states that she is a god, but is also called a messenger. Is her true form that of a god, or just a reflection of the god through her? I can't be sure, but I'm going to say that she's just an angel. And the reason I say that is because I think she used to actually be a regular human before being turned into an angel. I have some evidence behind this theory too. To start, I noticed something about her design that I haven't seen anyone talk about. To me, it appears that if her top, more human half has been crudely grafted onto this fleshy mound with crab legs, almost as if it had been a normal human form before being turned into this angel. But I understand if you're not convinced. One visual element isn't enough to convince most, I can imagine. But I feel like my theory has a smoking gun, the crown of the destroyer. This crown looks very similar to the halo on her head, and the description of this add-on reads, "The creators saw this and bestowed upon it a crown and said, 'Use this to bring light to the darkness.'" What if she was a devout follower of the creators, and even fought against the heretics, and maybe sacrificed herself? Perhaps one of the detonators blew her in half. What if the creators gifted her the crown in her last moments, which turned her into an angel, into the Judgement. Now she brings the full might of the gods to the heretics. These two theories are absolutely crazy and definitely out there, but I genuinely think there is some merit to them. But hey, we'll know when the chapter fully releases. As an enjoyer of this game's lore, this chapter is really getting me excited to see what could come out of it. I don't know if I'm right, but if I am, I hope I get, like 10,000 subscribers or something. But genuinely, if you have any ideas as to what these character origins are, or anything related to this chapter, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know what other people are saying. And that is everything that is coming with the Chorus of Sin chapter. And I gotta say, I'm really happy with it. We've built this chapter together as a community for over a year and a half, and it feels so great to finally see it in the game. Sure, not everything I voted for made it in, but that's alright, because in the end, we got one of the most unique and well-made chapters in years, with two characters that I see the community loving for years to come. It's been a wild ride, and while DBD has had more than enough flukes in the last year, I can confidently say that the Grimoire chapter, Chorus of Sin, is a success. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I meant to get it out much earlier, but of course this fever has just been beating me up. But as long as you enjoyed the video, I don't mind. If you liked what you saw, I would love if you could show me some support by liking and subscribing. I have a video about D&D Vecna's lore that is already nearly complete and will be uploaded in a few days. I'm really proud of it. It's going to be my first fully fledged character lore video, so I'm just excited to see what you guys think. If that sounds interesting, make sure you check my channel in a few days. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a divine day.